Hello and welcome to John and James Live. My name is John Hastings with my co-host, Mr. James Seelow. We're full of energy today, Mr. James Seelow, because we're talking about going from employee to consultant. Everyone seems to be losing their jobs, don't they, James? What the hell's happening out there?
I know. Well, apparently, what, 5.2% unemployment
Apparently
rate?
so.
In the
Yeah, the
3
worst
months
in
that lead
5
up.
years, isn't it? Apparently, this is what it's saying, and all the tech geeks are saying this is just the beginning. The tsunami of robots around the corner coming to take our jobs. So we're going to talk about what's happening and what we can do about this situation, James, because you and I have been in the consultant space for 20 plus years, haven't we? I guess a lot of people that have started off as personal trainers, they are sort of in that realm already, aren't they, James?
Yeah. Self-employed for over 20 years. And it's an interesting thing because depending on where you've been, if you've been employed or you're a self-employed person, a sole trader or limited company or whatever, it's like survival. And the same principles don't apply as when you're employed. I mean, I had a job from the age of 16, I reckon, up until probably my 30s when I started doing the PT. And it's a very different mindset.
Yeah.
You know, you've got that regular paycheck. There's a level of security in that job. And yet when you become self-employed, you've got to figure it out as you're going to go along. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee with a job at the end of the day. And I think that's a misnomer that, you think just because you're employed, you get a salary at the end of each month, that you're secure. But, things have changed as far as that's concerned. But I just think there's a different kind of mindset when you are self-employed or you run your own business as opposed to having a job.
It's totally different, isn't it, James? I used to contract with Santander and worked with a lot of people that they've been there for ages. The kind of people who've got final salary pensions, and you're just super jealous that they're going to be able to chill for the last 30 years of their life on this unbelievable pension. They've had the same type of job in the same company for 30, 40 years. They've got the watch. They go on the holidays. It was a lot of stability at one point in life, wasn't it, for a lot of people, where they had that job for life potentially, or they would change maybe once, potentially twice. But nowadays it feels like it's all change, isn't it? You don't know what the jobs of tomorrow are going to be. With the efficiencies of technology, people are being displaced, which is understandable. Companies want to, they don't want extra people on their head count. You have to pay for holidays. People are sick, pension contributions, it's tax. It can be a nightmare to have an employee. So I can understand from the business point of view, but societally, it's going to be a bit weird if people haven't got jobs. Who's going to buy the products and services that people are selling? So it's going to be a sticky situation, James.
It's a sticky wicket, mate. But I've had conversations with business owners, and I'm not going to name any of them, but some of them have said, like,
who are they? Name them, James. Name them.
No, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to be drawn on it. But there's a throwaway comment. It's like, business is great. The only problem with it is the people, or is having
people management hard.
And it's like, it's hard enough as it is, but then you've got to deal with, so to your point, it's like, well, you can see if stuff can be automated, and just the speed in which processes, reports can be generated, which would have taken weeks previously. And if that person was off sick, then somebody else then had to step in and do it. But now within microseconds, you can produce these documents, legal documents, data analysis at the touch of your fingertips.
100%.
So you can see,
no rest, no holidays.
Doesn't need it.
Quicker.
Doesn't need it.
No moaning. There's no home. There's no trouble at home. There's no drama. There's no politics.
Yeah, nothing like that.
This is tricky. isn't it, James? A tricky situation. So I get it. If you're an employee, and you're used to that, it is that paycheck. You know, I've never had a job before. I've always been self-employed, but I am jealous of people that are in work and that feeling of stability. Because I wouldn't say I'm a natural salesperson or entrepreneur. I don't even know what that means, natural entrepreneur, but some people seem to be actually good at the game. But I don't know if that's many.
Yeah.
If it's just survivorship bias and it's
Yeah.
luck. Do you think so?
I don't know, mate. I don't know. I think we all have these ideas about ourselves, don't we? Say, well, I'm not a salesperson, I'm not an entrepreneur. But like, what really is that at the end of the day? I believe it's about relationships. And I think it's the nature of the relationships you have with people. I think
a LinkedIn user says spot on, James.
Spot on.
Who is that LinkedIn user? Because I can't see who you are.
I can't see. Spot on to what, LinkedIn user? Be specific.
Spot on.
What are you agreeing with? What are you saying spot on? But I think I've had some really interesting conversations lately. Had a very interesting one this morning with regards to...
Did you really, James? Did you really have an interesting... Was it that interesting? Should we rephrase that? You had a conversation.
No, I'm not going to rephrase it because it was really interesting.
It's better be good, James.
And oh God, I built myself up now.
Tell us your interesting conversation. God, what happened?
I didn't think this one through, but it was. It was a really good conversation with somebody who's a lot younger than me, and you know, has a very large social media presence, and great advice around how you present yourself. It not being very sort of corporate, very sort of clipped and formulated and perfect, about being approachable, engaging, human, and getting into the emotion of it. So I think, you know, looking forward, the creator economy is doing things like this potentially, or really, really focusing on social media, I think is massively important. And when you think generationally as well, you know, kids are coming through now. You've got Gen A, we're into Gen Alpha, but obviously Gen Z, Gen X. The way in which they interact with the world is they want to see who you are in a genuine way. They don't just want to be presented with the final product and the perfection. They want to see the imperfection. But also there's a kind of a community element to it. And again, this chap I was talking to, a lot of their stuff started out as being one thing, and then it kind of morphed into something else. And now it's very much about, you know, community projects and doing things that people don't necessarily expect you to do. So,
yeah, I mean, being the all singing, all dancing, jack of all trades, wear all hats, self-employed solopreneur, whatever you want to call it, when you're starting something off, it's just not an easy gig, is it? Really, you got to find some product market fit. There's competition. You're doing potentially a lot of things you don't like doing, whether that's, you might not be the marketing guy, you might not be the other guy. That's why they say sometimes it can be, you know, good to have a co-founder or somebody who can sort of be the yin. But are these
just the things we're telling ourselves that we're not good at? You know, and is it an excuse to say, well, I'm not good at marketing, I'm not good at, you know, I don't want to be on video, I don't want to do that, and you know, I'm not good at that. It's like, well, I get it, because it's uncomfortable, like you said, and you know,
you've got AI now, James. Well, you've got AI as your friend, your co-founder.
So I've noticed on LinkedIn that if you post up, and there is and you told me about this, there's a way around it, and whether we should talk about it. But if you put a picture that's been AI generated on LinkedIn, and I put up a couple lately, it comes up with a little icon next to it to let you know that it's been AI generated. Now, the
CR, isn't it?
CR. So the ones that I've put up lately, the last couple of days, are so clearly AI generated, because it doesn't particularly look like me, and the pose that I'm in and what I'm wearing and all that sort of thing. but you'd like to think that actually now it's getting more sophisticated in detecting if something has been AI generated. That will then, but if you take a screenshot, as you said, and then post that, that little icon doesn't come up. So, you know, there are sort of, at the moment, there's ways and means around it. But I still believe the live format, doing what we're doing now, is key, that you can't fudge it. You can't, this is, you know, if it looks too perfect, then there's a possibility that it's been AI generated. If it's kind of warts and all, and there's fuck ups and people make mistakes and they, you know, may not say necessarily the right thing, but there's a, you know, a level of empathy around that you can, as long as it's not incendiary, etc., etc. But, you know, at the end of the day, if people do kind of make mistakes or say something imperfectly, then you kind of know that that is happening in real time.
But this is like talking about the icing on a cake, though, James, isn't it? It's like, who's the cake for? How do you bake the cake?
What are we talking about first? What cake?
Yeah, what the cake? You know, what's
What
going on? This is more like how to do the pernickety things of, you know, sounding more authentic or doing stuff like that. But, you know, people don't know. They've gone from being in a very narrow field, maybe in a job they're doing HR. No, they're not dealing with accounts. They're not dealing with sales, front end sales. They're not dealing with their own invoicing. They might be dealing with a very specific job with a very specific company. Okay, that gets AI'd out. What's your options? You're going to learn, you know, a different trade. Are you going to try and upskill? What do you upskill to when everything's changing in the future? Okay, you've lost your job. What do you do now? Can you get another job? There's going to be a lot more competition out there. Maybe your job is not relevant anymore. What are the other options? Become a consultant. You know, people are maybe going to move into this consultant economy. James, do you think it's going to go that way?
It feels like it. It feels like it, and I think the people that can get online and promote themselves are going to get ahead of the game. You know, I think if they're in a situation where they are going to become the authority on a particular subject. So going back to your kind of accountant analogy, if you've got somebody there who's saying, you know, these are the pitfalls that you can come across. You know, I've had several clients that have come to me with this problem. If it's something that's a sort of fairly regular thing that, you know, then other people can go, oh, wow, okay, that's great. More likely they're going to go to that individual for advice. So I think it's how you position yourself. Look, it's so easy, isn't it?
Tricky one, though, isn't it? This trying to find your niche, trying to stand out, because it's winner takes all sometimes in the creative field. If you look at most of the YouTubers at the top, it's like any industry, the top 0.1% make 99% of the income. Same if you're a music artist, you might be amazing. You might be better than the people at the top, but you know, those people are earning way more and more successful. So it's a tricky one. Nancy says, James, let's focus on the things that we cannot fully automate. Let's build a business where people are involved and given fair wages, at least enough to support their families, rather than just catering to greed and the pursuit of money. What do you think about this? I love seeing you happy, your happy faces. Keep smiling always.
Nancy, I've taken on board Nancy a comment on one of my posts that I put out earlier, and she said it's me and my costume for a business that I'm involved in called Stixit, and she said you look cute in it, as in I was smiling, and apparently I don't smile enough. So if I stay with like a permanent grin on my face,
you look like
I might get taken away.
Slightly dodgy. So what do we think about what Nancy said there? Building a business for people, or building a business where people are involved. If I'm honest, I would rather build a business where people are not necessarily involved, because I don't really like the idea of working for the sake of working. If you can automate stuff and you don't need people to work, like, work shouldn't be for me, and jobs shouldn't be the end game. There's the guy who started Anthropic, or one of those, is it Mustafa Solomon or one of those guys? But he was saying, look, jobs shouldn't be the goal. Should we want to have jobs just for the sake of having an income? But that goes to the roots of, our capitalist system. So I think we want to solve problems rather than give people jobs. But then it comes to a secondary problem. What do people do?
Yeah. I mean, that is the thing. I mean, a business is being built exactly along those lines to solve problems. And now, businesses, startups, etc., are being built in such a lean way that actually the workforce is like, 2 people, 3 people. The Lean Startup is a book, and that's, it's quite a quite a well-known book.
You've read the front cover of that book, haven't you, James?
I've read the front cover. To be honest, I haven't.
I've read the back. You've read the front.
Yeah, but it exists. So it's, it is a thing. It's like, well, how can you create a business with as little employee count as possible?
The true British accent on there from that. So yeah, I get it, James, with the book, The Lean Startup. But I think nowadays, I would argue that most businesses don't really need to exist. So have we reached the peak of insanity where we're servicing services that don't really need to exist?
Qualify that then, that businesses that don't actually need to exist. So the common narrative, I think, around business is that it was started to solve a problem. It was, and invariably, it's kind of founder led, that it was a problem that they had that they couldn't find a solution for, so they created their own. That's a fairly kind of like well-known comment that's made. If you listen to podcasts and things like that, you're listening to a founder and say, well, there's this thing, or something happened, their child was sick, or, and they couldn't find what they wanted in the world, so they created it themselves. Okay, so which is, it's an honorable and an understandable reason to start a business.
Yeah.
I mean, but then it kind of morphs into something else, because you then have employees, you've got to take care of them. You've got a responsibility. So, the way that a business kind of develops is you then have what was a kind of an idea you had in the bedroom and has evolved now into becoming a reality.
Why the bedroom?
I don't know.
Get out the bedroom, James.
Sitting on the toilet. So then evolving into something that existed, and then you've got people that you need to run that business, or historically needed.
Yeah, you need
you need the COO, you need the CFO, you need the CEO, you need all those kind of people. Then you've got the, your accountant staff and customer service staff and all that sort of thing. More and more of that is being outsourced, or you can have it AI.
Yeah.
So, you then thinking about businesses that can be run like that, or are you thinking, well, actually, I could help the economy. I could help those employment figures. And this business I'm creating could employ a lot of people. If it's in manufacturing, a lot of that's been automated. So what does that look like if it's being outsourced to China, to India, et cetera, et cetera? So,
but no one wants a manufacturing business, do they? A rich person wouldn't wake up and say, look, I can't wait for my kids to go and sit in a factory and work like my employees do for 9 hours a day just to give them a job. There's no rich person who's going to want that for their kids. There's nobody at Gymshark saying, at the directors going, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I can't wait for my kids to go and work in the factory and just sew pieces of, clothes together for 10 hours a day.
So I would say that you're generalizing, Mr. Hastings, and I would say that there are.
Give me one example. One person who's done it. One rich person whose kid is actually gone and worked in a factory doing a baseline job. That's minimum wage.
Okay, so I know of people that I know, and it's not a huge circle, but people who are business owners that I've come in contact with. They're not billionaires necessarily, but they have worked up through to get a good understanding of that business. So this is not their permanent job by any means, but they've come from the shop floor, they've looked at all the processes, they've gone through each department, and they've spent time in that department. If they're taking over that business, just gives them a much better understanding of the business and what.
Yeah, they've done a crash course how their own business works, but there's no chance they're going to be there for years and years on the shop floor making clothes. It's just not going to happen. So why should we have other people doing it just for the sake of giving them a job?
But on a different note, in terms of kind of an appreciation and perspective that has had his children work in like soup kitchens and do voluntary work and keep them grounded in that way, so they have a better understanding.
On a gap year?
No.
You sure it wasn't on a gap year, James?
Not a gap year. No, this was...
God. I think they built a school, didn't they, on the gap year?
Possibly built a well.
James, you are too soft with this. Come on, James.
This is that's the reality of that particular...
Nobody's doing that.
So I'm giving the balanced view of you just going like broad sweeping statement that nobody does that. But I admit it's unlikely, but there are always exceptions to the rule.
So we've got to redefine what the meaning of jobs means. Then secondary, like on a secondary level, we've got to think, how are people going to survive if jobs is not the be all and end all? Because I see the economy like, if we go back a few hundred years to slavery, we've got all these slaves that we've got. Okay, then they've got chains because you need to chain them together. Then you need to build houses for the slaves.
And how to
so then you've got all sorts of businesses that like come off of this industry. So okay, we need oil for the chains. We need a company that's going to dig for metals to make the chains. Then we need somebody who's going to do the insurance for the transport that transports the metal to build the chains to the place. And so all of a sudden you've got 1,000 tiers of services when actually the problem is you've got slaves.
Yeah.
So this is what I see as the economy on steroids in multiple directions. You've got a million different companies to do with health and well-being, meditation in the east, to the west, to the south, wherever in space, wherever you want to go. We've got, longevity talks. We've got gyms at every single corner. We've got information on the internet. Everything's there. Millions of professionals. What's happened? 75% of people are overweight or obese, epidemic of obesity with kids. So we've got a million services in a million directions, but what's the actual problem? We're not solving any problems. So maybe people losing their jobs, have people wake up. Yeah.
Or maybe we just become in love with the concept and not the outcomes.
Yeah.
It's that sort of celebration of a particular thing as opposed to what we're actually solving. So we're celebrating entrepreneurship. We're celebrating people, taking that leap of faith into the unknown and, striving to create something from nothing. But, are we just going through the motions of that? What is the resultant effect? And it's, so many markets that are saturated. There's so many people going to the fitness because this is the industry that we understand the best, is that there are a lot of companies doing the same sort of thing. So if you look at the gym market, there's a lot of companies that make bumper plates. There's a lot of companies that make weight machines, and then.
But we know that industry, James. If you've got 3,000 memberships, you are hoping that 90% of them don't show up because your business model is fucked. If they show up, you are screwed. You can't afford for people to show up. So you want people to be I'll go tomorrow.
It's a weird juxtaposition of intentions, emotions, of, creating a space for people to go exercise in.
Yeah.
But in a limited way, in a restricted way, that if everybody turned up who had a membership, it would be Armageddon.
I'm not saying it's a bad fit for Joe. I'm just saying there's inverse incentive structures across the system. So it creates a contradiction in all different places. I don't think it solves really any problems, but people just need an income to survive, don't they? In the way things are at the moment, which is tricky.
Yeah.
Nancy, the objective is to provide basic wages to individuals, particularly in India, where approximately 6% of women are either unemployed or restricted from working due to insufficient resources. By supplying these women with the necessary resources, we could enable them to establish sewing businesses. Additionally, we could develop a clothing enterprise that allows for the involvement of a lot of people. Given the rising temperatures, there is an increasing demand for skilled technicians, and it cuts off.
It cuts off.
I get it, Nancy. In different cultures, in different places, if you're outside of the West, people are. This is the problem with globalization, where things are outsourced to different places. So you go to any shop here, which will be in English or Marks and Sparks, everything's made in Vietnam or Bangladesh, because they're just offsetting that cost to poor people in a different country for much cheaper labor. It's just really, globalization is, for me, mass exploitation. That's really what it is. You can jazz it up and say you're helping people. I don't think for Nancy the aim is for people to make clothing. Clothing is just to keep people warm or protected or sheltered. We could have automated factories or where people can just have clothing and it's given away for free. If your ego wasn't involved, would you really be that bothered about your clothing, as long as it covers you up and you look relatively smart? It'd be better to just have something that just covers your bits, and then you can give it back, and we all wear some type of uniform. That's why I think aliens look the same, James. I know that aliens are normally naked, but they're so above the ego stuff that they don't really care. They would rather explore the universe than worry about their fashion.
Maybe they're in a different mindset. They're not repressed in that
advanced civilizations.
They've got more important things to think about than the clothes that they're wearing.
100%.
What's your take on youth unemployment? So between sort of 16, 24-year-olds, I think, what was the statistic, like 15 or 16% unemployed, which apparently is the lowest it's been for over a decade.
I think we got to get back into apprenticeships.
I've got young children.
Yeah.
And your daughter's 17 now, so she's just coming into the job market.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? What example are we setting? Is it, again, sort of YouTube orientated social media influencer? Is that just from our perspective generationally? I'm 10 years older than you. Is that a weird kind of bias because that's how we see it presented? Are they going into engineering? Are they going into industry? Have you had any conversations with her in regards to what she wants to do?
She's very confused. Yeah. As am I, to be honest. I research this stuff most of the time, and it's what are you going to say? I don't know what's going to exist in 2 to 5 years' time.
Yeah,
they're trying to find themselves. In an ideal world, you explore, you do different things, you do apprenticeships, you go work at different. You don't know what you like or what you're good at unless you go and try stuff. Sometimes there's a process of elimination, so it's sort of going with a. There's probably certain things that are not going to be good, but I think it would be beneficial for a lot more companies or professions to get involved with schooling, to speak to them. My daughter was saying about being a lawyer, and I said, look, I've got friends who are lawyers. I'll get them to. You have a phone call with them, ask them about their role.
Yeah.
Most of the lawyers I know, they hate their job. They get paid well, but they hate it. So I'm like, look, this is the reality of this role. You're going to be at a desk. There's going to be a lot of politics to become a partner. You might shift around. Yeah, you earn good money, but this is going to be your life. Or if you want to be an investment banker, this is going to be the reality of your day to day.
And interesting. So I was just thinking about Nancy there, and we had a conversation a little while ago about the sort of the cultural differences, and depending on where you're from. So if we're talking about Nancy in India, and you've got the caste structure, and again, the stereotype is that, you know, you're encouraged to go into the medical profession, the law profession, or become, you know, something along those lines. And then that will push the narrative in respect of, you know, what career options are open to you, or what's the expected career option. So all of those sort of things, if you think about culturally, down to where you live, is going to influence the market in respect of how many people are kind of coming out of this sausage making factory of going into the workplace, and what they are looking to do or wanting to do, because they've been kind of pushed through the system from school to university to, you know, higher education, after that, whatever. And then they're spat out the other end. And if the job market isn't fit for purpose, you've got all that backlog of kids that are qualified in a particular area that don't have any jobs to go to.
Yeah.
So is that a waste of, you know, 4 to 8 years of their lives training to become whatever they're training to become?
It's like the adage of learning to be a barrister and then you end up being a barista, isn't it?
This is it.
You do see though that people working in coffee shops, they've got like a degree and they've got all sorts. But you see people from, my brother works in a care home, and you got Indian people coming over, they're working in a care home. These are like highly qualified engineers, like working in a care home. You think, okay, this is tricky. Even my wife coming over from Moscow, she's a surgeon, and she's had to take a role, a much lower role. In an NHS job. That says, most of them are, John, it's not just your daughter. I feel that a majority of people in their 20s struggle with discerning what is good and what is not worth it. Yeah, Nancy, this is 20s, 30s, 40s. Unless you're in quite a stable, I would say, industry. What would you say, like house building? I know even with the electricians that I speak to, it's not an easy game for them either, because the guy who just came around to my house said he was traveling to Liverpool from London for work at the moment, and they would go up there, spend a couple of days on a project, come back down. Potentially with immigration, they might be getting priced out on certain stuff, or it's a bit of a race to the bottom on pricing, isn't it? Sometimes in that field.
And again, you sort of hear there was this. Whether that's still the case of a spate of the city people wanting to get off the treadmill and go into an alternative profession, so like become a plumber or a carpenter, or go into a trade, because of the stress. So you've now got a different demographic coming in, whereas before that would be seen as, more kind of, dare I say it, working class, lower middle class. And now you've got that sort of top-down feed into it, that they're then sort of looking at that as a more attractive option because of the stress. So, I guess when you're looking at kind of trades or jobs that will be potentially, certainly in the short term, future-proof, then things like that kind of spring to mind, don't they?
That's trades. What some of the AI, I can't remember, is it Jeffrey Hinton said, that become a plumber, that type of thing. I think it's okay when you say that from an external point of view and just say, I just become a plumber. But I know people that are plumbers. That's not an easy gig either. There's problems getting around London, parking issues. There's all sorts of charging and getting in and out of London, and tolls. Then you've got to get from one job to another. When the traffic's bad, it's a nightmare. Then if everyone starts being a plumber, how long before that industry to get saturated? There's less work to go around. So I think there's bigger economic problems, systemic problems that are beyond just getting a job. But in the short term, it's like survival of the most adaptive, I would say. So if you're an employee, then what else can you do but say, okay, if I want to take my life into my own hands, could I be a consultant? What problem could I solve? What problems are out there that companies are having there? I can gear myself up to do something in that role.
and again, you can generalize, and you can, sort of cast a net over majority of people who are employed. But I've had plenty of conversations with people in maybe a sort of a coaching role or just in general conversation, and they feel trapped, and they're like, well, I've got another 4 or 5 years of this before I leave, corporate rat race, and I've just got to endure that 4 years. But the health is suffering, mental health is on the floor, and you kind of look at it and go, well, what's more important, your mental health, physical health, or ensuring that by the time you've done that 4 or 5 years and qualify for retirement or whatever that looks like, that you have in your head that concept of enough money to retire on. But if you get to retirement age and your mental health and physical health is in the toilet, what does that look like? So, and people on the whole, they'll go, if you mention, well, why don't you do this for yourself? You've worked in this industry for all these years. I'm like, no, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So it's
sometimes they're right to say that. It's not that easy. If you're not 100%. Switched on and you haven't got the energy and you're not ready for a lot of failure and testing.
It's too much. But these are the conversations we're having. And I would guarantee that people are having these conversations on a daily basis with people that are complaining about their situation. Most of the time, they're not asking for a solution. They're just wanting to offload. But it's that situation that they're like, I feel trapped. I can't leave because, I've got mortgage to pay, I've got kids to feed, husband and wife, or husband or wife or partners depending on me. And that's it. That's the reality. Yeah. So, it's great to be able to sit back and say, well, actually, you should be retraining. You should be thinking about how you can, but fucking hell, when you're in
that's a mindset shift, that is, isn't it? I'd say if you're 4 or 5 years away from retirement, you're probably in a more fortunate position to the youth of today. I'm looking at even the youth of today or middle-aged people. You think about how you're going to afford to have a property, you're going to afford to have kids, what the job market's looking like. You're going to have to become this, entrepreneur type of person. It's
the fear that stops you because it's so overwhelming. And it's like, you wake up in the middle of the night and say, shit.
Yeah.
And that paralysis of going, well, what do I do? What do I do?
Maybe entrepreneurship, James, should be looked at more like sport. Not everybody's going to be Messi or Ronaldo, are they? Or LeBron James or Michael Jordan. And you're going to have people who are mentally good at, delegation, finding niches, getting people together, getting the right systems in place. It's just part of their makeup, whatever it is. It might be cool under pressure, low neuroticism on their Ocean 5 personality. So could be multiple things, high conscientiousness, getting things done, getting the right people involved. But that's not going to be, just because somebody can do it, it doesn't mean you're going to be Messi.
Yeah. Well, anecdotally and interesting, and I'm almost disliking myself for saying it, but I listened to a podcast with Reid Hoffman of Netflix and the whole culture that was behind Netflix.
Reed Hastings.
Reed Hastings, sorry. Yep. Reed Hastings. I should have remembered that, bearing in mind.
I wish he was my dad.
I know.
Could be my long lost dad, couldn't he? Reed Hastings. I'm probably older than him. That's the thing.
It might be a claim. So, but he was talking about the culture in Netflix and this thing of some sort of businesses being like a family, and all their employees are like family, and they want to look after them, and they'll make allowances and all that sort of thing. He said no. He said the culture within Netflix is much more like a sports team. That if you're not playing well, or you don't make the cut, then unfortunately we're going to have to let you go, because you're not going to get a situation in sport where if you've got a really poor player and they're consistently playing poorly, are they going to be kept in the team? because they're going to impact results. So they took the same attitude towards their business, and they'll obviously give you opportunities to improve or to change. And if that still didn't happen, then unfortunately you would be let go. So it was just listening to what you're saying about sports and being messy, etc. But that was the kind of the analogy that came through, that it's like, well, we are all moving towards the end goal. And I think with AI coming, sort of circling back to AI in terms of the expectation of productivity, that because of AI, the expectation now increases, and the speed in which you do that increases because of these tools that we now have available. I don't know that you've got an excuse anymore to take weeks to produce a report, because of so much of it can be automated and very, very quickly. So expectations have changed, the pressure's increased. Post-COVID, pressures increased because people now, if they're working hybrid, working from home, working from the office, there's no commute necessarily like there was before. So that commute time now is productivity time. And meetings that you're not doing face-to-face, that are online, you can have those back-to-back now. There's no excuse why you can't have them back-to-back now. And therefore, the expectations are increased exponentially because there's not the traveling time, there's not getting to a place to have an in-person meeting. So tolerance levels may have decreased as a result. What do you think?
Yeah, with AI agents, you might not need all of that organization either. They'll pretty much be able to do it for you. And I just think in general, the economy will just monopolize. You'll see it. There used to be like thousands and thousands of farmers, and now there's like 3 to 5 companies that run all of the food production. So you're seeing that there's big companies like the Nvidias, the Apples, Microsofts, these are eating up the majority of the market. The people who are the best singers in the world, they're 0.1%. They make 99% of the money. It just seems to be the way it goes. Most, like 0.1% of football players make it out of the academy. It's very rare for people to become a professional football player, but
Yeah.
thousands and millions are trying to. It's pretty much sometimes like winning the lottery. Even if you're an investor, you know that you're going to invest in multiple businesses, and you're going to hope that one of them will be enough to pay back all the money you've lost. One will be a unicorn, one will pay it back.
And that's the odds you play.
But how can we have that mentality, James, in society? I get it, I saw it with a Stephen Bartlett post as well about this not being a family, and I get it. If you put your capitalist hat on and you think business, you could think, look, slavery is a great business. You could put your head on and say, look, I want to own these people. I want them to do this. I want it to do that. Great business, terrible for humanity. Horrendous. And I think in business, there's loads of concepts like that, James, where great in theory, business-wise, but if I'm in a community and I'm putting everybody out of business, like maybe Amazon was doing, where if there was a section of the market where they wanted to control, they would underprice that company, put them out of business because that person couldn't compete on the volume, because they can buy in volume because they got the firepower, take a loss, put that person out of business. Once that person out of business, put the prices back up, control the entity of that demographic. But if you do that and people are losing their jobs, and all of your community losing your jobs, and you're the Mr. big time entrepreneur, you're the best. What are you going to do when your community's starving?
It's when you look around you and you go, oh, okay.
Because you're just going to get the pitchforks. I think what you're going to get is eventually you will have situations like, well, not eventually, like the insurance guy that got murdered. Did you hear about the health insurance guy? There's big health insurance problems in the US, and some guys just, was trying to claim for something, it didn't work out. Yeah, it's a crazy thing to do, but he's just gone and killed this guy, the CEO of a company, on the streets. And I think the pitchfork thing is a thing. If you look back in history, when you push a society too far, I think that you're going to have the rich people getting mass security. Security is going to be a huge thing, right? It'll be drones,
French Revolution
personal security. Yeah, apparently, the security at Davos this year was just off the scale. Crazy. But this is what you're going to have. You're going to have mass division of the haves and have-nots, and it's going to cause big issues. And AI is just the optimization. You think that you're winning in your small microcosm of life, but as a society, it's going to cause major problems. And we know that that's going to come. So,
but I don't know that any industry is necessarily immune. I mean, I think back to, I did a little stint as an extra on a film, and when you were talking about Amazon, so the behemoth that is Amazon.
What was you in the film, James?
Hey, security. I was typecast. Security guard.
Was you security in the film?
Well, I still got the little earplug. I kept a little.
He was protecting the rich from the poor.
I was
That's
in
the police. That's the police's job, isn't it?
No, man. I was in the VIP area. Anyway, that production was possible because of MGM and Amazon. So this kind of, behemoth. There's always this push and pull between the two, isn't it? You think, well, all of those people there, like me, there were over 500 extras, all getting paid.
Yeah.
And this film, obviously, it's going to make how much at the box office, the actors, etc., getting paid. So on that set, there was conversations around, if they want to scan you, don't agree to be scanned. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So they said, well, they can scan your image and then it can be used on, later date to be put in, to be taken out, to whatever, digitally. So that then takes you out of the loop. If your image and your entire, body has been scanned, then you can be digitally included in it.
Because what they'll do is they'll scan you, use your data as like the extra in the background, and not have to pay you. That's what they're going to do.
Put in, you can be taken out. Okay, the legals of that, I don't know. Anyway, and then on even another level to that is popping up. You get feature films now that are done completely in AI. That there was no set, there was no actors. Everything has been, and it's been done within a day, created in a day in these studios, and good. I mean, engaging,
really good,
really good stuff. I mean, it looks incredible and will only get better. So you think about, what the safeguards and the legality of that, of now taking out the film industry. That you don't have to be spending months and months and months on location. All of those places that are paid a lot of money to be in that location, that then gets taken out of the economy. Clearly, all the actors are taken out, the cameraman, all of those, the makeup artists, the costume. And until you've actually been on set, you don't realize how big these productions are and how many people are involved in it.
There's a knock-on effect, James, but it goes back to sort of the slavery analogy. The only reason particularly they need that money is for something secondary. They need to access food, they need to access housing, they need to save up, they need access for something secondary. So they're having to do something else to make that money. And this ends up being the makeup artist, the extra for a film. So it's your sort of first principles problem solving. You actually get to the root cause of what's going on. Nancy says, James, it's heartbreaking to see that mental health has become such a significant concern in our society, yet many people struggle to acknowledge it. I understand how difficult it must be for men who often feel the weight of societal expectations to be the primary earners. When they can't work, it can feel like their value within their families and society diminishes. And that pressure can be overwhelming. As a 31-year-old woman, I recognize that if I don't work, it might not carry the same weight. 100% true there, Nancy. I would say, would you concur, James? I think there's a pressure for men. If you're not economically viable, you're pretty much being castrated. But in the same way for women, it's more of a loss of looks and beauty. I guess for women, the fear is once they, if you get to 30, 40, there's this pressure to stay looking young, where men potentially don't have that same problem.
I think it's all social value, isn't it?
Biological clocks as well, I guess, for women.
And the way in which, boys are brought up to men to be the provider, to be the person that's there, the consistent, whatever.
Yeah.
Potentially, again, generationally, that could be changing. And, you see it time and time again for women, that social value being looking younger. And if they're aging, then it's frowned upon. I mean, it's like,
I don't know if it's frowned upon. I think it's a societal pressure that's come about by consumerism to make people feel less than, to get them to buy
look
stuff.
young, to buy stuff, face creams, or, I'm inundated with, videos of women going and having facelifts. They're sort of in their 60s, 70s, and ending up looking like they're in their sort of late 20s, early 30s. So, but look at the beauty industry.
It's more the pressure between women rather than men. Because if you ask a man, what was your wife wearing last week when you went for dinner? He's like, I have no idea. I wasn't paying it. It's not about women will notice.
Yeah, I think there's a combination, but again, we'll only say it from a man's perspective. But like, there's a similar kind of thing coming through for guys. It's like, well, going to the gym. Is it for other men or is it for women? Well, you could argue
it's for other men, isn't it?
It's for other men. But it's a self-confidence thing, isn't it? And you want to feel like you are able to handle yourself. That's, if you want to take it down to fundamentals, if it's the sort of very root of it, it's that thing.
Do you think it is nowadays? I think it's pure aesthetics. Because how many times people said that I want to be fit so I can handle myself. In reality, how many altercations do you get in your lifetime? I think it's
the threat of it. But it's the threat of it. It's not necessarily it actually happening, but there's always that little thing just bubbling underneath.
You feel threatened, James? I don't feel threatened. I think if you're a weak-looking guy, you're probably less likely to be threatened.
Yeah, but that is common sense. But common sense doesn't prevail here, does it? Yeah. The irony is that the first thing is true. Because if you look big, then potentially you're going to become
boys will like you.
Become a target.
Other men would admire you. You got big arms.
I'd spread the net far and wide.
But so I think we're going to move into the consultancy.
We've gone off topic slightly.
Yeah, we've gone way off topic. We're going to move into maybe from the employee model. I think is probably going to start dying off naturally. Yeah, maybe we're going to have jobs that we don't know existed, like social media managers back in 2005. We didn't know those were going to be a thing. There was going to be all these offshoots of jobs. But in general, I would say maybe specialized consultancy roles where you do something specific for shorter amounts of time in the economy, like 6-month contracts working on something specific, and then you move on and you do something else. You've got to be quite flexible, sort of upskilling all the time. But I think we'll probably have to move to a universal basic income. I cannot see any other way that it's going to be sustainable. I think we have to give people money.
Back to my point though about relationships I mentioned right at the beginning. So if it is transient in nature, how do we formulate those relationships of trust? Is that going to be a necessary thing anymore? Are we become generic that everything we do is very much kind of, what's the word? Standardized. So now there's no need for relationships because you know what you're getting. It's all been pre-qualified. There's an understanding what it is. It's been vetted. You're served it up like, you'll pull a lever and this meal comes out in a very sort of, perfect form. There won't be any inconsistency to it. It will come out exactly as you want it, the heat that you want it, everything else. There's no ambiguity, there's no if, buts, or maybes. And, you know, what will life look like if everything is delivered in that way? So the trust element.
Gary V saying the pendulum's going to swing to the real world. And he's not bad at, you know, making predictions. That
so it's going to swing back the other way, that we're then going to have a situation. Mate, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
I think any extreme, it normally goes back to, you know, if you get people in front of computer screens and phones like we have done for the last 10, 15, 20 years, mass addiction, and maybe there'll be a turning point where people would just think, I'm sick of this, and they real life interaction. Then we're gonna have the concerts come back, the real world conversations. I want a picture done by a real human artist. I want this. But maybe the robots will give us the freedom to be able to be more creative if we
But is it going to be a pastiche? Will it be a caricature of what we think we want? You know, is it going to be manufactured in such a way that it's packaged in a way that we think that's what we want in terms of that pendulum swing? I mean, again, mentioned this before, but the likes of record players, and going back to that sort of tactile nature of having a record, putting it on the turn table, putting the needle on it, you know, all of those kind of interventions, the feel of it, the sound of it, the smell of the vinyl, all that kind of thing. And yet I've got a record player. You know, I was
going to buy one the other day, and my brother said don't, because they're a pain, and plus the vinyls are very, very expensive.
So this is what I'm saying, that the you know, the romantic idea of going back to these kind of traditional styles of thing, I think, yes, there will be a yearning after it. Yes, I think there will be a romanticizing of it, but I think it will look very different to what we think it's going to be, that it will have the modern interpretation integrated into it, that it will just be, like I said, a pastiche, a caricature of what we think we want. And
I think that's a very fair and poignant point.
Well, thank
James.
you, Mr. Hastings.
No, so I think it's a great point. It reminds me, we'll take Nancy's question here. Oh man, don't get me started, John. The level of insecurity and jealousy that women have is just too much for me to handle. I really wish I could have friendships like men do with one another. Their brotherhood is so strong that they don't do anything for each other, and it's absolutely amazing.
Well, why is that, Nancy? And you know, is it still that we're governed by upbringing of what women's roles should be and how they should be with each other, being passed from mother to daughter, fathers' relationships with daughters, being overprotective, again, culturally, you know, what is expected of women in particular cultures?
Biologically, there's that thing about, you know, a woman picking a guy to potentially have offspring with, you know, there's all different social, psychochemical differences, isn't there?
How many generations will it
and
take?
To be honest, if you look at the stats, Nancy, they said like a lot of men haven't even got one friend anymore. So I don't think there's a massive loneliness epidemic with men. So I wouldn't put men out there as this,
as an example of
example of connection and relationship, because I think women probably make friends quicker, might be more loyalty maybe in some type of scientific research with guys, but I think nowadays guys have very few friends. I think the stats were really poor, weren't they, James, when we looked at them before? But
and it is interesting because you're going to get pros and cons to both sides. You know, like you said, women stereotypically, it feels like they talk more, that, you know, they pick the phone up, they talk to each other almost intuitively, knowing how each other feels. You know, my wife, again, this is she
calls me. Does your wife?
She calls you. I mean, you got, you know, clearly in touch with your femininity. But like, I'll be in the same room with her and I won't necessarily pick up on that, but she'll get a phone call from one of her friends saying, you know, I was just thinking about you, and I just thought I'd give you a call, and you okay?
Yeah.
And she, well, you know, I haven't feeling being, you know. So
that sounds like us, James.
yeah, it is, isn't it? A little
We're like
bit.
old women.
We are.
A little bit of gossip.
But it's fascinating. But
I like your point though, James, what you were saying about the difference of what it's going to be like, or what you think it could be like. When I say going back to the old days of what Gary Vee was saying, because I went to the opera on the weekend.
You did.
And like what you just said, it reminded me a little bit of whiskey and a cigar. There's an idea that the whiskey and cigar, it just looks cool, but in practice, the whiskey normally tastes like petrol, and the actual cigar is awful.
Yeah.
And I found the opera a little bit like, I think I had to step out on it was like 3 sections of this opera. Midway through the second section, I'm like, this is doing my head in.
Overstimulated.
It's just too much. I'm not posh enough for it. I don't know what it is, or I've got ADHD, or I couldn't sit there and listen to it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I just stepped outside, and I didn't go into the last bit. So opera definitely not for me. But maybe the idea of going to the opera was much better than the reality of it. For me, to be honest.
So how many people then, interestingly, were dressed up? Anybody there in a dinner suit?
Everybody was smart. Everybody was probably just above smart casual, I would say. But you know, there's a class thing to the opera, isn't there? There's definitely a vibe about going, but
not all operas are created equal, I have to say as well. So it, you know, rather than writing it off, it could have just been that particular opera, but then
super talented. Whatever the woman who was the main, the woman and the guy were unbelievable. How she does that singing for, you know, an hour and a half is just incredible. That is a real talent. But would I watch it on the TV at home? Hell no. Was it good to go get dressed up? Yeah, definitely. Beautiful environment as well. And I can imagine if it was my vibe and it was more like, you know, groups singing and a crowd was singing, there was somebody on the stage and it was just different. You know, it's horses for courses, isn't it? Maybe it's just not my vibe, really. But again, who knows what the future is going to hold? Like you said, is Gary Vee right? We're going to go back to real life stuff. I don't know, James. It might be something we don't quite understand, like a hybrid virtual reality. If you're born into this life and you're a kid and you're just, all you know is internet connectivity with this ether internet thing, are you even capable of going back and riding a horse?
I mean, there's certain things clearly that are just incredibly inefficient, you know, time-wise. If it's that inefficient, you've got to go some to want to do it, or to be motivated enough to go do that. I mean, like we talked about it, you know, building your own house, you know, foraging for food, cold showers, anything that's sort of adversity that is incredibly, depending again on what your perspective is, rewarding, of building something yourself. But it's like, how likely is it that I'm going to go build my own house, or go out and kill something to eat, or go forage and grow my own food?
Yeah.
Because the inclination isn't there, the time and the money isn't there. And it's hard enough going to the supermarket.
I think that's another great point, James, you've made there, and I think we'll leave that for another episode. But that just reminded me of optimization and automation, efficiency. How far do we take efficiency and optimization? Do you want to go on a cruise and the cruise boat be like a bloody speedboat which gets you there in 20 seconds? You've missed the point, haven't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, how far do you want to take it? But no, thanks for listening, guys. I think the consultancy route is going to be the way forwards. If you listen to the Peter Diamandis Moonshots podcast, they geek out on this type of stuff. this is what I was taking from what they were saying, that this is going to be way forwards. The knowledge worker economy is going to die off. There's going to be huge changes in the coming few years, and I don't think we're prepared for it. Robots are on the horizon, and we don't really know what's going to hit us. So we're going to have to change things fundamentally on this.
Or Mother Nature could have different ideas that stuff is forced upon us.
I think so, yeah.
Soothsayers that have a very clear idea what the future is going to, and then all of a sudden we get a curveball.
Which changes everything. You're right, James.
With that thought, because there's ain't no certainty.
And for you and I, James, we're going to get out our pitchforks and march the streets. So we'll be out there with you guys, okay?
Let's do it.
Take care, Nancy. Thank you for checking in, and thank you for the LinkedIn user.
During that one.
Smile, James.
I have an expressive face.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.